Welcome to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast. We're happy you're here. On the podcast, we're certain that you'll relate to the caregiver stories and find comfort with your honorary sisters. Now, before we start, I want to remind you to go to our website, confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com, and sign up for our newsletter. It's full of useful information that you can immediately use. Now, let's learn more about today's guest.
All right. So today, ladies, we have our friend Licia Thompson with us. And boy, does she have quite the confession. I am so excited to have you here, Licia. You know, Jay, as always, she'll be sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly related to caregiving. And we all can relate. Yep. So Jay, you gotta tell us a little bit more about Licia. Let's just get right all into it.
Okay, we're just going to jump into it. So, so I'm going to say, Licia, right off the bat, you have led a very busy life. So you, at the same time that you were married, you were being the mother of two, and you were advancing your career. You spent 22 years at Macy's.
Ooh, do you get a discount there? I really want a discount.
I still do. Yes.
Okay, now hold on, Natalie. You were the National Workers' Comp Director, and so you, the National Workers' Comp Director of the Return to Work, Managed Care, and Vendor Relations. So,
Right.
but I love this because 2020, you took all that experience and you said you just made a complete lifestyle change. And I'm like, that is fantastic.
We support a whole change, like quit your job and do something different kind of thing.
I know.
That's right. That's right.
Mission right now is to redefine values, vision, and thoughts so people can thrive and take action. And I know Natalie, Emily, and I love that because we always want to, just take action. Caregiving wise, you have kind of, you have, of course, your two girls, but caregiving wise, there was a time in your life when you helped take care of your mother, your father, as they went through health issues. But you pulled family together. They were divorced. You pulled them together, made sure they were part of your children's life when you said, basically they were not speaking, that kind of, once they divorced.
I love that she said, I'm sorry, people, pull it together.
We're coming back and we're celebrating at birthday parties. So that's kind of, I'm like, okay, I got to know how you did this. But also, during all of this, I need to know, like, okay, let's talk about this because you have cared for, you're kind of that sandwich person where you're caring for your family, you're caring for parents. We'll toss in there a little later that you wrote a book. And
in her free time, Jay.
Yeah, in her free time. So let's jump right in there and let's kind of get started. We may go backwards.
You never know which direction.
Yeah, I know. So tell me where are you when you start taking care of your parents? Is this after you've launched your own business or where is that?
Yeah. So, no. So that happened. My daughters were actually in college then. And I can't remember, one had graduated the year prior, and the other one, I believe, was a junior, I think. Yeah. So, nope, I was still working full time. Life was status quo at that point until my mom's health declined first. Yeah. And then subsequently, I would say, I don't know, a few months after she passed, then I was immediately back into the caregiving role because then my father's health declined, which I knew was coming when my mom was still alive, nearing the end is when cancer for him returned. So.
I want to push back farther because this is the thing that's interesting because this is something that we haven't talked about yet in any of our podcasts is parents who are divorced. So you're like wrangling a lot of kitty cats because you were
exactly.
younger, your parents divorced, and then kind of just a brief high level 10,000 over that.
Yeah, so I was 12, I believe, sixth grade, when my parents got a divorce, which I would have to say, even as a kid, I wanted them to, because it was not working at all. And I was just like, I love both of you, but you're terrible together. And so I vividly remember the day that my mom picked me up at sixth grade. She came to school. It was winter. So it was kind of, that day there were snow flurries. And I remember a friend, one of her close friends from church came and found me at school or whatever. So she's, hey, your mom's outside. I go outside and the car is packed. And I get in the front seat and I look at my mother and I go, so we're moving.
Wow.
And she's like, literally, we're going to look for a place. Like, the car's packed and school's over. So it's the end of the school day. And that's how it began. And I remember saying, thank you. It is time for you to do this. So
isn't it funny how kids know? The kids always know, and these parents think, "Oh, we're just going to trick them." But the kids always know.
Oh, no. Yeah, no. And so that was for me the beginning of seeing her being fully independent, because she had tried to be, which was part of the issue that occurred with my dad, because he did not want her to be at all.
Yeah.
And in fact, did things to stop her from being independent. And so that taught me a lot, right? As a woman, well, then as a kid growing up, but looking back, it taught me a lot about resiliency, and then also knowing who you are as a person, and then honoring it and refusing to let obstacles deter you from that, despite what it is. Because a lot of women back then would not have done what she did. She went back to college because she had finished 1 year of college in Atlanta. We lived in Cincinnati, and this is before I was born. But they dated, I guess, when she was in high school or whatever. He went to the military, to the Army. She went to college, but he's 5 years older than my mom. So long story short, she comes back to Ohio and didn't have enough money to go back for sophomore year for housing and everything involved, and got a job. So at that point, right, she only got 1 year of college. And so after I was born, she decided that she was going back, changed her major, did a whole career change. And that's when it got probably very difficult for their marriage. Because he wasn't, at that time, women were still not necessarily pursuing college as often, I guess. So interesting times.
She was independent to a certain extent. I mean, if she was still going out to college, she was pursuing that. And then it maybe the relationship itself just kind of pushed that down for that time period that they were married.
So they got divorced. And then, and that, again, we were just talking before we started about, Gwen and our guy from Coldplay, like having their unconscious or their conscious uncoupling. So did they consciously really uncouple for a long time then? And until you had kids and you were like, you laid down the hammer and said, look, you people, you're going to be a part of my kids' lives, whether you like each other or not.
Yeah, because I had grown up doing things separately with them.
Okay.
Which worked until I started thinking, okay, now I'm married, my child's going to be one, and they will need to figure this out. Like it even prior to that, it had started becoming slightly difficult and troublesome personally for me, not for them, but for me. Because, what am I doing? I'm going to have separate birthday parties or my kid,
That's crazy.
No. So anyway, I remember having that conversation and I really didn't ask them. I just said, this is what we're doing. We're going to make this change. We're doing this. You both will be showing up. You figure it out. I
love that you just said, figure it out. It's like a slap.
Yeah. It's not on me. This is for your grandchild. Then I had another one 2 years later, even more important for you to figure these things out. And it was visibly awkward for them for a long time, but I just didn't pay attention to it. Not my issue.
That.
I'm kind of thinking how that's going to work for Emily. She and her husband are divorced.
We'll say ex-husband.
Yeah, ex-husband. Sorry,
ex-husband, of course. Yeah. So I had two, single parent of 3 kids, worked, ran, but still had those kind of same gender roles as your mom and dad. That I stayed at home with 3 kids. He was military, went to work, always supported greatly, but we ended up, unfortunately divorcing. But we had the 2 birthday parties separate. And, now we're talking about weddings, the kids getting married eventually. And so that brings up concerns because we really do not communicate well
and
at all.
And it was funny watching them as adults because they were kind of like, they really want to. I mean, but I pushed it a little because that wasn't important. It was about the kids.
That's right.
At least that's how I viewed it. Some of my friends disagreed with my thought process.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
I kind of like it. It's like a slap. You get over yourselves because I think it's what it comes down to is it's not about you.
Right. And that's what I kept saying.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And so you have the girls, which I love because we're girls, and probably the dogs were girls, and so then so the girls are growing up somewhere in between. Your marriage doesn't work out, but here's the interesting thing, girls, is that your ex-husbands, it's your in-laws, right?
Yeah,
you're super tight with your in-laws who've been married like 1,000 years, like. I want them to be my in-laws as well. And so you've got this, like, it's so interesting. And I know we're talking about caregiving, but I think this is important because you've got these breaks, but you still say relationships are important.
Absolutely.
And so because at some point, somebody's going to end up, as we're all aging every day, I'm a little bit older. And so how do you support that? And so let's push forward to kind of like, what was life like? You said that your daughters were in college, one had getting ready to graduate or whatever. And then the other was your mom gets sick. And so because both of your parents, did they live close by?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then
30-minute drive here or there, but
that's pretty much the same. Right. And so you were all like, it's the same. So what do you, how's that relationship at that point as they're aging and you're supporting them? Like, where did it kind of start? Like as caregiving, did you slow into it?
No. So, I vividly remember because it was fall, my mom had actually just purchased a new car, had me go with her to purchase this new car, which I thought was unnecessary because the car she had, by then she had retired. That car didn't have like extreme mileage. And she was very independent, still traveling, had launched another business. She was an educator, elementary school principal. So she retired and then she built an after school program, but housed it at the church. So she was still educating because she had staff and tutors and a computer lab and all these things at the church.
Wow.
And so very active, and then started having some health issues, which actually was the second time around, but she had overcome before and successful life. So in my mind, but it quickly started declining after buying that car. And so I just remember I kept thinking, why was this car necessary? But then I realized in hindsight, I think she knew that this time might be different because she had given her other car to my oldest daughter, which meant then this new one I gave to the other. And I thought that's how my mother, she always looked out and made things equal for them, for my kids. So anyway, but yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep. So I end up, she was very lucid. I mean, she had COPD and congestive heart failure. So her mind was the same. How she approached life never changed. So she orchestrated everything from the beginning of her health decline all the way through hospice. She signed her own paperwork for her admission to hospice. And I kept wanting to get up to go take the pen away. But then I thought, but she's willingly doing all these things. Wow. But that bothered me because who signs the paperwork, And then she looked at me and we were at the hospital. She looks at me and she says, don't worry, I have whatever the insurance is called now. I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, but for inpatient stays, if you
oh yeah, the hospital coverage.
Yes. Yeah. So she's like, oh, don't worry. I have, and I wasn't worrying about that. I'm worrying about,
she's thinking about the
where we
Affleck
are. Like, this is where we are in life. I can't even process because I had just had the meeting with the physicians. My two cousins came into town, one from Chicago, one flew in from New York. And because I said, I'm going to have this conference with the doctor. I know that it's not going to be good. That was on Friday. They came into town on the weekend. So they went with me and we literally left the meeting and they said, okay, you'll meet with the hospice care team. And I'm okay, fine. Cause I'm processing because I didn't know we were going to have a hospice conversation until we were in the meeting. Right. And so I'm processing, but we get to my mom's room, same hospital, and they show up within 5 minutes. So I don't even have time to process what we're doing. I mean, like, I know what we're doing, but in my, that's, you tell me, and then I'm meeting the hospice team. Like, so, so my mom orchestrated, handled all of that. Had the conversation. They're telling her on average about 3 days, like, oh, and I'm just like, oh my God.
So let me ask you this, because I'm dying to know. Girls jump in whenever, but I mean, because I'm like, and then what happened? So did you and your mom have conversations about her medical beforehand? Because how much were you involved in like finances? Because I know our other guests have talked about like, oh, you need to work with your parent about finances and all the documentation and whatever. Did your mom, because she sounds super independent.
Yeah.
Did she have those conversations with you?
She had for years, like she was an international traveler for after retirement. So she would tell me every time before she got ready to leave, she would take me and show me where she had all, her file cabinets and all these things, where all her important papers were. It always made me very uncomfortable.
Of course.
And she would always say, well, you need to know just in case. I mean, because I'll be over in Europe or, whatever. And so, so I knew that. I knew where all the keys and everything were. But when she was in the hospital and all that, I mean, she had planned out everything. So financing, it wasn't an issue. She had already done all of her, her will, all that paperwork had been done years prior. Yeah. So none of that was an issue. It was purely trying to navigate through the ever evolving changes in diagnosis. But then also because of my career in the work comp industry and working with managed care and the nurses and all that for return to work, I knew how to read medical reports and test results and all of that. So, and medications and things of that nature. So that wasn't the challenge. Even though I wanted her to get second opinions, and she didn't necessarily want to do that because she had confidence in her healthcare team, which I don't want anyone to be that confident because they're human, right? There could be a mistake. There could be something that was overlooked. And so I was in there saying different things.
It's just your mom too. I mean, it's the flip side. It's your work, you have one mind, but your mom, you kind of are, that's totally different.
Right. So, so I don't know that it would have mattered at the end of the day. Having an earlier second opinion may not have mattered, but who knows? Maybe it would have. So,
was the experience and with your dad, his organization, exactly the same? His plan?
I already knew it wasn't.
What a question you should ask.
Because you've just gone from almost like a hands off, but your caregiver responsibilities was supportive in nature, supportive of her decisions.
We partnered. We talked every day, always anyway, but we talked about that, and we partnered through and made joint decisions. So, and I had to pull back because she was totally equipped and orchestrated. I mean, there was a situation once when her medications were delivered to her in the hospital, and she knew that it was incorrect, that that's not what they look like, and that she knew that the whole thing was off. And she had a conversation with the person who brought them and the conversation didn't go well. In my mom's opinion, she felt disrespected. And so she's telling me this. And I said, well, let me go talk to them. And she stopped me. And she said, no, I will take care of this because I have to be here and I have to be dependent upon them. And she's like, you can't go out there like that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear a lot. It's almost, I feel like the child side, I feel like we got a therapy session going on a little bit. Like the child side, the child in you was not ready. And your mom was just, it's so interesting. She's such a strong woman, which I get that sense from you too. And I know that you pass that to your daughters, which makes my heart just sing. So your mom passes, and then a couple of months later, because I know that you were probably still just kind of, your mind is like trying to absorb that.
So let me correct. So it wasn't even a few months later. His health started declining. She was still alive. So I knew that there was a finite amount of time before I'd be taking him to chemotherapy. It's kind of what I knew. And so it was just a few months after. So although he didn't need me to be a caregiver right after she passed, but mentally I'm processing, I can't believe she left. And then knowing I have this short unknown amount of time. So my youngest daughter was still in college and had just moved into an off-campus house that she was renting with friends. And I remember telling my dad about it. And this child is very petite. And so he always worried about her because of her size, and that people often and still do assume that she's a lot younger than she is. And so he kept saying, I need to see this house, because she's leaving campus, like she's too young and small. And so I remember having that conversation with her, like, I got to bring him like ASAP, because I don't know how long before we're in chemo and things. So we did do that just so he could have peace of mind. And I just remember that moment, because I knew then that's the last time he's going to be on campus. That's the last time, all of those things would, and they had just lost their grandmother just in a few months. So very challenging.
So
but he was not hands-on. He was the total opposite.
Okay.
He knew he had always controlled everything in his life. But I think he became maybe overwhelmed with the way he was feeling, because he was a cancer survivor for, I don't know, 20 years, maybe. I don't know. I can't remember now, but more than 10 years. So he was thriving, living life, still driving a Corvette, working out in the gym.
Oh, Lord.
He's
living his best life too. He's working out the gym, driving a Corvette. Ooh.
Right. He's still, he was, So it caught him off guard too. Yeah. And, but then he also couldn't retain, like when the physician asks you for dates, when did you notice this? What happened and blah, blah, blah. He could not recount things without a struggle. But he had a friend who had been taking notes and had a phenomenal memory. And so thankfully, I was able to partner. She and I partnered in that way, though I didn't want her necessarily to be that involved.
Yeah.
But I appreciated it once I made peace with that, because that was his choice, that they had this relationship that I thought was interesting, but it became very helpful. And she and I are still friends because she's a beautiful person. And it worked out very well that there were then two of us helping him when his health got to the point where he needed help. So that was another.
No, but that's a total tag team caregiving, because as a caregiver, I think this is important. I mean, you're going to have lots of opinions, right?
Yes,
as a caregiver, and what people think you should do. And when your loved one says, I want this person involved too. And because you're an only child, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm an only child.
And so you're like, I'm the person, I'm the daughter, I should be here with what we believe that we're told that we should be doing. Right. And then he's got this other person
right.
in the 2-seater saying she sits here,
Yeah.
then I would think that would be hard, but
Right.
it takes a big person to set aside your own personal stuff and say,
yeah,
I'm willing
once I got to know her, because I didn't know her that well at the time. And I wasn't even sure why they were in this relationship, because it seemed odd. So
Yeah.
but when I got to know her, I recognized that she was a good person and she had high moral standards and all the things. And so they were helping each other for different reasons. And that was kind of how that relationship played out. And so that meant, again, it's not about me. Put aside my feelings, because they care for each other and they work well together. And that's all I needed to know. So, she and I became very close through that year, maybe if it was a year where we worked together on his care. So, but yeah, it was pivotal, because my mother, as you heard, orchestrated and she held all her own conversations. She was her advocate. I was her co-pilot, maybe, if you want to call it that. And so I, on the sidelines, I'm nodding in agreement, or I'm saying we need to talk about this, Mom, separately, things of that nature. But it was a true partnership. But with my dad, there was a time when I took him to the emergency room because he was hemorrhaging, basically. And we go to the ER and they triage him and they say he needs a test, and that I would take him home and then call and schedule the test. This was on a weekend, so I can't call this provider until Monday. So I'm thinking, well, we're at the ER because he's bleeding. And your expectation is that I take him home and then phone on Monday to schedule a test. And they said yes, like this was normal. And I remember I internally, I'm thinking, this is insane. And so I remember I'm trying to be calm, and professional. And I'm looking at my dad's poor face, and I could see that he was not only worried, but in that moment, he totally gave up. Because he looked at me in my eye, and he said, this is after I had the conversation with the physician, and he said, "You're the boss. Going forward, you're the boss." Well, we had always had this longstanding joke, because he would always laugh and say to my kids and to me, he'd always go, "I'm the boss. I'm the boss. I get to tell you all what to do. I'm the boss." So in that moment, he in sad face, which broke me down, because even though it had been a joke, I knew that he was serious. But, so I'm saying to the physician, "I'm sorry, but he won't be leaving the hospital. You'll need to admit him. And then we'll take it from there." And so I remember the doctor says, "Well, what do you want me to do?" And that's when I said, "You know what? I don't want you to do anything. I got this." I remember don't worry about it. Because in my mind, I thought, you're useless. I don't need you, because what you're saying to me makes zero sense. Yeah. And there's no way I'm taking an 80, at that time, I think he was 82. I'm not taking an 82-year-old who I can see where he's losing blood. It's not, no. And so I went into prayer. I went into a hallway in the hospital. And I just remember, because I thought, I don't really know what to do other than to call his primary care physician or whatever, but I will not be, we're not leaving. They'll have to admit him. When I got back to where my dad was, and the physician came back in and he said, "Okay, we will be admitting your father." I'm just like, why would you say what you said and make me have this emotional, all the things? But that's when I recognized there's truth behind the fact that sometimes people look at elderly people and they, despite the fact that the patient still has the will to live, and the family is supportive, but yet the physician is saying things that would have made my dad's health condition decline even more rapidly. Yeah. Beyond the fact that he would have been physically, mentally uncomfortable and probably could have died on my watch had I said yes.
Yeah. So I hear all this of you caring for your parents, but did you hit like a crossroads before, when they started getting sick? Your girls were already in college. So did you feel like you had a little bit of a break being, a full-time mommy, and then it just went straight to caretaking your parents?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Because I didn't see it coming, because my parents didn't see it. They were fine. So it just sort of happened with her. And then when his health started declining, she started helping me to look for resources for people to come to his home. Just because he started which was interesting, because she didn't have to do that.
Right.
But we had conversation around that, and then when I told him about her health, and then he was with me in the car, actually, when I got the call from the hospital about coming in for that visit on that Monday. So he was in the car, and I had just pulled into his driveway, bringing him back from some tests. So when I get this news, he's with me. So then I tell him what I heard, and I could see the concern on his face too, which I had never seen.
Yeah.
And so then he became, he started asking me questions like, you're taking care of both of us. He said, are you still going to the gym? Because, working out is essential. And are you getting proper sleep? And I would literally not tell the truth, because I didn't want him to think that it was because of him that I couldn't do these things.
Yeah.
So I would go,
So how did you manage, caring for both of them? Like, I know it was kind of an impasse for me, like, kids going into college, adulting, and then bam, I'm here taking care of mom. There wasn't much of a break of like
a break in between. No break. Yeah. But honestly, I didn't think about it like that at all. It was, I'm the only child. These are my parents. I owe them everything. So we'll figure it out. We'll just figure it out day to day as best as possible. And we did. And that worked. The lessons came after both of them had passed. I made I had missteps, obviously. I'm in this lifestyle with them, but I'm also leading teams at work and a department. So, and I always went to work, right? Normally before this happened.
Oh, wait a second. So you didn't take any FMLA, intermittent FMLA. You didn't use your benefits as benefits queen of Macy's.
And that was the huge misstep. And that's exactly where I was going, because that's the lesson I preach to other people now. Because it never occurred that, even though my team, myself, I worked with the team in leave of absence every day for decades. I knew them intimately. We talked about, the well-being of employees and who was eligible, who needed accommodations because they were running out of eligibility for their leave, their FMLA, intermittent leave, and all of those things. I knew that world, but it didn't seem to, I didn't think I needed it, because I was managing everything. So I went to work every day. Right. I went to work every day. I came, and I was used to being exhausted. That had been my way of life from the time my children were born until they left and moved into a dorm, because, all the things that they were involved in and everything I'm trying to teach them and whatever. So that wasn't unusual to me. I knew how to survive, even though I was fatigued. And so becoming their caregiver simultaneously for that period of time, to me, it was a lot, but that's what you do. I mean, life throws you curves, you rise to the challenge, and you make it work. So it wasn't until after my dad had passed, and I went on a vacation, and then I don't know, a few months later, I still felt extremely fatigued, and I couldn't understand why. I knew I was tired when he passed, and I remember thinking, okay, now I'll be able to just get some sleep, because I had gotten to the point of being accustomed to getting phone calls, all through the night or whatever. And so I thought, okay, well, now I can get rest, but I never felt rested. And that's when I started thinking something's wrong. And then when I would walk I parked 2 blocks away from my office at work. And so I would always power walk it, and on purpose. And I couldn't do that without being winded when I got to the door, and that got my attention. And so I went to scheduled a complete physical, because I knew then something's not right. Still not thinking it has anything to do with everything that had gone on, but my numbers were off. I had gained weight, all these things. And so we do all these tests, and I'm still thinking, okay, I just need some time and I need to get this weight off. But so I'm out running. And then I remember I also had about an hour and a half drive in traffic home after work, the most days. And so I remember one day I started feeling like a pinching sensation on the left. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. And so I drive home and I call my primary care physician, and I said to him, pretty sure I'm having a heart attack right now. So he asked me these questions. He goes, I guarantee you're not having a heart attack. And we talked through, what did you do yesterday and the day before? So I said, so I went to the gym and I was running and this, that, and the other. He's like, well, how far did you run? And I go, about 3.5 miles. And he goes, you're not having a heart attack. And so I didn't believe him, because I'm known to diagnose others and myself.
Absolutely.
Love that. I self-diagnose.
That's Dr. Thompson.
Google.
Dr. Thompson.
Right. So, so I go in. Anyway, it ends up being that my cholesterol was up, or my heart rate was off a little, but not, I didn't have like high blood pressure needing medication and all that, but I did go through the test and everything. So I realized, okay, I'm not having a heart attack. We go on a vacation. I come back from vacation, and my daughter, we had a conversation in the car about my addiction to Diet Coke, and all these things came out, they saw on the vacation. So I go, okay, so that's a Friday. Saturday, I go in the gym that is owned by my neighbor, former NFL football player. And I said, I need a trainer. I need this person to be aggressive. Otherwise, I'm prone to jump in and think that I know what I'm talking about, even in an area that I don't know, which would be being a trainer. So I get my trainer, and it was rough, but I wanted that because I don't know. I had to get the weight off ASAP is what my thought process was. And I'm cleared to exercise. So I got to go hard because that's what you do. And so I realized maybe a couple months in working with him, one day I'm there and I realized I felt good. I was exhausted because of the workout, but I felt good, and I hadn't felt good for a while. And so that's when I realized the power of mental and physical, putting them together. And I promise you, going to the gym, pushing myself beyond my self-imposed limitations that I had mentally and physically, because I was on a track team growing up in school and stuff, but I hadn't competed and done anything that strenuous since the end of my sophomore year in high school, because we didn't have a track team the last 2 years. So I'm in it like now at 50, whatever, pushing and doing all these things that I hadn't done in all those years. So it was tough, but it was necessary for me in my mind at the time to get my body stronger. What I didn't realize is that transferred over to my mental strength. And I vowed then that I would always be in the gym. I still am. Like, I know that I will work out until I can't, because it changed my life. I promise that I know that that's what happened during my trainer had no idea, but I knew what was happening. I could feel it. I could see it. And then I started having progress, right? And losing weight, but not the way I wanted. It was taking too long. So again, I talked to my primary care physician. He gives me a referral of a woman who he says, I know you both well. I'm sure your personalities will mesh. So I call her. She's a nutritionist, and she was very aggressive, and she made me mad like the second visit. And but I got it together. I got it together, right? Because I couldn't, it was too much to process. Like she's telling me the calories, the this, the that, the change it was a lot. And I remember just shutting down for a while until she said, "Did you read the material that I gave you?" And I said, no, absolutely did not. And, and I'm sitting there like, why is she talking to me like I'm 5? Well, because I'm giving her behavior of a 5-year-old. So I go home, I read everything, I get it together. This is what I want. This is what I need to do. And man, so then I lost in a year, I lost 9 pounds on my own, working out and crawling on the floor because I'm so fatigued after the workouts, right? I get with her and I lose 16 pounds in about maybe 5 months. So
what's mindset? So
it was mindset.
You're doing all this stuff because, honestly, caregivers do not typically during the care journey, they don't take care of themselves. And if I know I've read statistics about individuals who actually have, if they have gained a lot of weight, they don't take care of themselves, they start having very serious health issues. And so that impacts them. And there are caregivers who pass
before the person that they were caring for.
Well, even then, or shortly thereafter. And so the stats are there. So you do all these things and over a window of time, it sounds like a year and a half. And then you decided and then you're like, okay, so you're feeling better and you say, I'm done.
Mm-hmm. So some time goes by after that, though, a few years after the caregiving ends, but I'm still working out and I'm feeling good about my career. I get a promotion right after my dad passed, like all these things were happening. So that's great because it was a huge promotion. But in 2018 is when I start feeling, it was fourth quarter because I always do my first quarter, my annual goals for my team in the fourth quarter. So I'm doing my personal and my, professional goals and plans. And I remember thinking then also, I notated that I'm not feeling jazzed up about my career anymore. It's great. I've loved it. I've had a lot of success, but I believe there's something different I'm supposed to do, but I didn't know what it was, but I knew it had something to do with coaching. And so I began looking for coaching programs that in January of 2019. And I decided that I'm giving myself a year to figure it out. And I'm going to leave in no later than December of 2019. So I've got to figure it out because that's my end date regardless. Okay. So then I'm thinking, they've offered a severance package to people at my level and age for 5 years. And I've declined each time because I kept saying, I'm too young. I'm not of retirement age, blah, blah, blah. I love what I'm doing. So I thought, okay, now I feel differently. So when they offer it, I'll accept it, but they didn't offer it. And I'm thinking, are you kidding? I'm ready. And so a couple months go by and I think, man, I have nothing to lose. I should ask if they will offer it.
Absolutely.
And so I go to the controller of the company. I schedule a meeting because I believe that this person has the ability to make it happen, right? So we have a conversation. I remember her looking at me and she goes, "Are you asking me to sever you?" And I said, I would appreciate if you could make that happen for me, offer the package that I've declined. I am now ready to accept it. Yes. And then when I left her office, I pressed the button for the elevator and I'm waiting. And I thought I was going to pass out right there. I broke out in sweat.
I just quit my really good job. And so
I leave the building because now I need to go take a walk.
Or a prayer or something. I need to get on this
because it's not in my head anymore. Like I premeditated this conversation several times to articulate it in the way that I felt was appropriate so that I could get the yes. But then when it became audible, now it's real, right?
Yeah.
So that got me.
Hey, ladies, I need to interrupt for just a second to share about the Sisterhood membership. It's basically a sale every day. And the best part, it's free. Here's the details. We're partnering with our friends at Benefit Hub and other care partners to save you money. With over 200,000 participating companies across the US and abroad, you'll find discounts at your favorite local stores, huge savings on vacations, amazing deals on home, auto, and supplemental insurances, and everything in between. Go to confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com to sign up, and then definitely tell your friends about it. They can join too. Trust me, there's a discount for everyone. And don't forget, it's free. Okay, back to confessing.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because I know we're going to have to bring you back for a second podcast. I mean, girl, I'm telling you right now. So let me ask you a question, because I'm gonna push it there. I'm gonna stop it there.
Yes.
Do you think that your caregiving journey influenced the after? Because I know what you end up going to and writing a book and you're coaching people about, their life and caregiving and even divorce. Because you
and
divorce.
Yeah. No, it took me a while to figure out what my niche was and to own it. And then when I finally got the full clarity, I just remember like that was right there in front of my face. And I didn't know the whole time. And I didn't know, but I knew corporate was 22 years in corporate was amazingly great for me. But I knew that I felt led to do something different. And I just didn't know what. So I wrote the book. The book is what gave me the clarity to figure out my words and my chapters and how is this book going to help people? And that's when I started getting the clarity. Like, I know what it feels like to be a divorced mom whose their dad was, I don't want to send any signals or messages that he was very involved, very active with our kids. So we were fine when it came to showing up for our children. But I'm still a single mom building a career. And then my parents, and then they passed. And then now my values have changed. And that was the part I want to touch on really quickly in closing. Having been divorced and a former caregiver, the way I viewed my future and just the world in general, it's a great place, but we have a finite amount of time to be alive and to thrive. And so I want people to recognize you don't have to have gone through some major life-changing event, but most of us will at some point. It's who you become after and the lessons that you learn from your journey that I want people to use in positive ways versus being overwhelmed and maybe just uncertain about the future. People know they've been changed. They know that they need to make some edits in how they live or think. They just don't know how. So a lot of times nothing happens and they become frustrated, right? And that's what I don't want. And I saw that in all those years of leadership. So everything I'm doing now comes from all of that, like being a leader, having teams, seeing people come into work broken because of something at home that they just didn't address. But then it bleeds out onto their coworkers and low productivity or whatever. So my journey has come, what I'm doing now feels 100% right for me. And I'm just very thankful to be able, and so I'm not the reluctant caregiver. My reluctance came after, or maybe I was reluctant to ask for help. Reluctant.
I mean, you did not take FMLA. I mean, honestly, I just want to know what reluctance looks like. It's like, I can do it because I can tell you, I would think I can do it. And I'm sure we've all thought, I don't need any help. I can do it myself. And the reality is you don't have to.
You don't
and
have
it doesn't
to.
make you weak and it doesn't make you bad. So, you know what?
And it denies people of helping their friend, right?
Honestly,
or their family member who they love. They love too. So a lot of lessons were learned.
Well, other parents is a perfect way for self-care. It's when you help others is a perfect way for self-care. You know what though? Because right now we got to do it quick, but I want to have sister questions.
All righty. All right.
Emmy, do you want to start with the first sister question?
Goodness, I feel like I've asked a ton of questions.
That's okay.
Selfishly for myself, like, how did you get through this?
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay because you did really good.
How did your daughters like transition in this time? Like, how did it affect your children?
Yeah. So my parents were at my oldest daughter's college graduation, clearly struggling though with their health and their mobility. So although my kids had come home to visit their grandparents, I think that probably became the pivotal point in knowing that, even in that short window, that when they had gone back to school or whatever after Thanksgiving and things, that their or grandparents' health had declined exponentially. So it was tough. And then they were very close to both of my parents. So them processing that both their parents had passed in that short period of time was very challenging for both of them. And then my youngest daughter was still in school too, in college. Yeah. So yeah, it was tough.
Jay?
A couple of words that you used, which was you have the ability, once something happens, you always have the opportunity to edit that. There's edits, which I'd love to edit. You got to remember that you can make those edits. But one thing that you also mentioned was we always talk about FMLA. And I think there's so many people out there that should take FMLA. Would you say, Licia, that most of the companies out there, that's available to employees? And what should they do to pursue that?
Yeah.
Do they just forget to ask?
No, and in my case, it wasn't that I forgot. I did not even consider that it was there. Like I was fine. I was fine. But no, it's there for a reason, right? And so, yes, you just request the paperwork, fill out the paperwork. Okay. Everything is kept confidential. So the person that you report to can't and shouldn't even know why you're off. They just know that you're on an approved leave of absence. And, they're kept in the loop as far as the timing of it. But, and it varies depending on, your hire date or whether you've previously utilized a leave. And so you have to have eligibility. But that process to determine if it's available is fairly quick. So yes, an intermittent leave versus a full leave, you might just need some days off, or you might just need hours off. Maybe you go part-time instead of full-time for a defined period of time. It's there for a reason. It's a benefit. It's a benefit.
So ask. That's it. Everybody needs to ask for help. And I think there's help out there. We just need to ask. And sometimes we talk about it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Last and favorite question is always, I like to claim it as mine. The girls just let me, is what is your favorite guilty pleasure? Because I felt like it's Diet Coke, but I feel like it's not Diet Coke anymore.
It's cheddar cheese popcorn.
Oh,
I have an addiction, you all. I must admit.
Okay.
I have been known to leave home at 10 o'clock at night and go to the grocery store.
Yes. It's like a pregnancy craving. You have to have it. It does not go away.
Is it a small bag or is it a big bag? You can tell us.
It's a big bag.
Absolutely.
This all began in the 6th grade, maybe, because my neighbor's mom introduced us to cheddar cheese popcorn. Okay. And so I've had, times when we broke up. The cheddar cheese and I have broken up, but we always relapse. We come back together.
It's okay.
It's a healthy, unhealthy relationship.
It's very unhealthy.
It's the cheese. Maybe the cheddar part is the unhealthy, but the popcorn is the healthy.
Right.
Your secret is safe with us and all the people that listen to the podcast. We're so okay.
Absolutely. It's fine.
Licia, thank you so much for coming on. I've learned a lot. And especially, like I said, my word is we can always make edits. You don't have to be frustrated.
And there are no mistakes. They're just missteps. Therefore, we can edit. So,
that's beautiful. It's beautiful. We want to thank everybody for listening as well today. We have enjoyed our time with everybody and hope, Natalie, that they will listen again.
I hope they do too.
I do
because
too.
We've got lots of good confessions like Licia. And Licia, we appreciate you being here. And we appreciate all of our listeners joining us until the next time. So thanks guys.
For the opportunity.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, friends, that's a wrap on this week's confession. Again, thank you so much for listening. But before you go, please take a moment to leave us a review and tell your friends about the Confessions podcast. Don't forget to visit our website to sign up for our newsletter. You'll also find the video recording of all of our episodes on the Confessions website and our YouTube channel. Don't worry, all the details are included in the show notes below. We'll see you next Tuesday when we come together to confess again. Till then, take care of you. Okay, let's talk disclaimers. You may be surprised to find out, but we are not medical professionals and are not providing any medical advice. If you have any medical questions, we recommend that you talk with a medical professional of your choice. As always, my sisters and I at Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver have taken care in selecting the speakers, but the opinions of our speakers are theirs alone. The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of the Sisterhood of Care, LLC.